Welcome to another exciting episode of Real Talk in My Rooms. I'm your host, Amanda Christie, and today we have a very special guest joining us. Doreen, a highly talented and seasoned professional photographer, is here to share her expertise in photography education and the journey from hobbyist to professional. Get ready to be inspired and learn valuable insights that will take your photography skills to the next level. So without further ado, let's dive right into the episode. And Doreen, please introduce yourself to everybody.
Well, you already gave me a glowing review, but I'm Doreen Laskowitz of Doreen Laskowitz Photography and Grit and Golds magazine. And I love talking about all things the arts, especially photography. But I'm by trade, I was actually a music teacher. So I'm retired from that. And now just enjoying starting all kinds of new things in the arts and media and fun stuff like that.
Yeah, you really are. You're out in the community. You're helping. I see you out there with all the women businesses and helping them grow with your magazine. And real quick, before we even dive into the questions, I would love for you to tell everybody a little bit about your magazine that you have.
So the magazine is called Grit and Goals. I was trying to find two words that had to do with, how tough it is sometimes to run a business, or the fact that sometimes it's not exactly fun, right? Some of the things we have to do, you just have to get through it, and that was the grit part. And of course, something relating to moving your business forward, and that's where the word goals came from. But I do focus mostly on solo entrepreneurs. It's fun for me to be able to say to a small business owner, I'd love to feature you or tell your story. It does focus a lot on women who have sort of interesting backstories. I don't want it to be just like a big advertising booklet of small businesses. It really focuses on women's stories. So some of the women in the magazine may not be business owners, but they may be people in media. They may have an interesting personal story. So it's, a variety of things. And then also throwing some lifestyle in there, which I enjoy having contributor articles. So women who have specialties who want to write those useful how-tos and things like that. So it's really chock full of other people in each issue contributing. And of course, being a photographer, I'm very particular. I'm not the only person who puts in it. There are some issues that we've had over a dozen photographers contribute, but just to have a beautifully laid out issue and really give a chance for small business owners or women who normally wouldn't be in larger venues a chance to say, I've been published. So that's
Okay, I'm
exciting.
here. Now you mentioned ad space. How would one get ad space in the magazine?
Well, they can head over to my website, gritandgoals.work, the magazine site, and there's information about different tiers of ad space that they can buy. And what's great is with this past issue that we have out, the current issue, we started offering a digital copy, which is in 2024, the digital copy will be free. So if you buy an ad space, you'll actually have live links. And I have a pretty good size email list. So it's going to go right out to tons of women in the tri-state area, right into their box. And when they click on the links for your ads, it goes right to your stuff. So I'm excited to be able to tell businesses about that, about advertising.
That's so exciting. So I will definitely want you to talk a little bit more about that in the end, like how someone can be a contributor, but let's dive into the questions that we have for you today. So, Doreen, many aspiring photographers dream of turning their hobby into a profession. Could you share some key steps or strategies that you would recommend to someone looking to make that transition?
Absolutely. I think a few of the biggest things to keep in mind when you're a hobbyist looking to turn it into a profession is, first of all, don't believe everything you see on social media. I've seen some newer photographers who think they're ready to tackle weddings because their friends and family tell them, what a good eye they have. And your friends and family on social media are going to always compliment and love everything you do, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. There is a learning process. Secondly, constantly take up every opportunity to learn. A camera is not like a magical unicorn machine that you just push a button and awesome things come out of it. I think a lot of hobbyists or looking to become into a business, they haven't taken the time to really learn the technical end of the camera. And I'm talking about the boring stuff, the optic of lenses or the physics of how light behaves. So really just be hungry to learn. And when you have somebody who offers to help you learn that, um, jump on it every chance you get. And really just learn the business end of things. And this is something that I see a lot of. A lot of newer photographers think they can just throw up a Facebook page and start offering sessions. But talk to a tax professional, find out what kind of insurance options there are. What do you have to do to pay your taxes? What do you have to do to be legal? And it's not just because we're trying to keep an industry honest and to high standards. It also protects the photographer as well. I've seen people set up garage studios. Well, what happens if somebody comes for a session and they trip over something in your garage and you didn't tell your homeowners insurance that you were now running a business? You're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah.
So really seek out the business professionals that will secure you on the legal end of that, because it can really get you in some hot water financially, insurance wise, all sorts of things.
Yeah. And that is huge because, like you said, sometimes it's like, oh, like you have your family and friends. You're great. You do great. You should do this, do it. But they don't realize what goes into it, how much actually goes into it. Like you said, the one end, the education side of it, but then the business side of it, they're two huge factors of it. And if you don't have either one of them, or if, like you said, you have someone who wants to mentor you or help you, jump right on that, because it's going to help you. It's going to help you get your business going to become the professional that you could be.
Yeah, and especially too, like when you're a lot of photographers, when they're starting out, they think they should just throw a whole bunch of cheap stuff out there. And my strong feeling on that is, if you start off cheap, it's going to be hard to raise your prices and then get the clientele that are looking for a high end or a luxury product. And the other thought, and this I saw, I think it was Sue Bryce who does photography education, and she's really fantastic. One thing she said that really stuck with me was, it's not your business how other people spend their money. How other people spend their money is none of your business. And that goes big time into pricing, because once you start to factor in what it costs to really run a business, you have to pay for a website and insurance and gear and all that stuff, and you start pricing it appropriately. I think we as creators always deal with that guilt factor, like, oh, I feel bad asking this person to pay this much for a session. Well, you don't know what their money situation is. That's none of your business. You have to charge to run a business. It's not, you just have to. So start off, once you have everything, all your legalities in place, you should start off with a livable rate, really.
That's great. That's huge. And that kind of actually leads us into the second question. So, as a professional photographer yourself, what are some essential skills or techniques that you believe every photographer should focus on to improve their craft?
I think one of the things that's been part of my big journey in photography is really been how to deal with light. And, it seems very simplistic, right? That's sort of like the ground level of what we do as photographers. We're constantly like looking for that good light. And my feeling on that is, you have to, and this is a mindset change for me that really snapped a lot of things into place. A beam of light never changes how it behaves. The physics of light never changes, whether it comes from the sun or a flash or a strobe, whatever. How a beam of light behaves never changes. And that actually really made a huge difference in how I think about approaching a lot of things. I know some photographers who call themselves natural light photographers, but they don't really learn about the physics of light. And that's where you get into, I as the creator, there's no such thing as good light to me. I as the creator basically control the light, right? Good light for me is the light that I'm able to measure, reflect, deflect, absorb, create, whatever. That's my job. So I think a lot of photographers, and I've never had a studio, so I've always dealt with outside shoots. And we've all kind of been there where, as long as I had a good shade spot to put a subject in, like I was good to go. But I, I'm not a shade photographer. I'm a natural light photographer or whatever. I never wanted to call myself natural light photographer because I think it's a limiting belief. But my big thing is, like I said, once you realize that light, the way light behaves, instead of saying, oh, well, I want to shoot at golden hour because that's really good light. It doesn't matter if it's the sun, a bulb, a flat, whatever. A beam of light always behaves the same way. And when you start to think about light in that way, you'll really get a grasp on how to control it and expose your images properly.
Absolutely. And do you have any recommendations or tools on where people or where should they start when it comes to learning about light? So someone just starting out who really wants to get into it, like what could they?
I think if you start to study with people who really embrace off-camera flash, I think that's one of the most difficult things to really get a handle on, right? Especially if you started, like a lot of newer photographers started doing, like, oh, it's a nice day in a park, so I'm going to do sessions there and whatnot. I use flash for my outdoor sessions. If my background is brighter than my subject, then I really should have put some flash on them, right? So there's so many resources and they can actually be quite overwhelming when it comes to it. And that's why, finding somebody who can really do that one-on-one, see where you're at, assess it, and then work with you individually. But there's so many resources out there, like YouTube. You can go down rabbit holes for every little photography topic that you'd want. And it can be overwhelming. So
the University of YouTube or Google.
Yes. Yes.
Two of them. And they can be overwhelming because once you open up one, it starts to like give you the others and the others. And then you're like, oh my gosh. So having also, I feel like the one-on-one like mentorship type style is always great too, because you're getting that, like you're doing it as you're being mentored if you're in person. But I do know that there are other ways where you could do, mentorship via Zoom or whatever it is. But
right. And for me, I love to reverse engineer things that I see. So when I look at other photographers' work, I'm always trying to see, like, oh, I recognize that they use this lens, or I know that they know about things like depth of field because I can see the relationship from the subject to the background and whatnot. So I'm always trying to reverse engineer things a lot. So, and as a teacher, that's part of, that was a big part of my job, is to be able to assess my students and see where they're at. And also a lot of that is looking at their work, and I can kind of tell, like, not that gear always makes it, but if you see certain things, like, people who have a lot of high contrast, well, maybe they just don't have a newer camera with a bigger sensor. They're not getting that, range of shades and things like that. So I kind of like picking things apart. That's kind of fun to me. But yeah, in YouTube, you can really, it can be very overwhelming. So to basically be able to have that mentorship where you can say, I think this is where you're at, this is where you want to be, this is what you need to do to get there.
And before I get to the next question, you have a team of people, correct? Like you have like a team of photographers that you work with?
I have a few that I work with regularly. And then depending on the situation, I'll have contributing photographers. So for example, in the spring, we hosted a styled shoot with PA Wedding Guide. And they had set up this great shoot, and we collaborated with them in a way that whoever came to the shoot as a photographer would be in the summer issue. So those photographers all got to submit their work, and then I got to pick things from it. Every photographer who came got one, two, or three images, depending on how big of a real estate on each page for each setup. I also have, sometimes women contribute things about, if they're an author or their business and they're not geographically close enough for me to come shoot them. That sounds weird to say shoot them, photograph them, but and they have a regular photographer that they work with. That photographer will get credit in the magazine too as a contributor, which is nice because my feeling is if I can set up something where I can bring in as many different small women-owned businesses as possible, I find that to be fantastic. So
Absolutely.
when I do find women that I want to feature, it doesn't mean that they're close enough for me to go photograph them. And it really does give an opportunity for somebody else to say, hey, I'm in print. Woo-hoo.
Right.
I'm published. So
So I know you're in Pennsylvania, but and I know
yes.
you also work in New Jersey, but with that being said, you take people from all around the US for it to be like featured
Yeah.
or
Right now I'm focusing sort of on that tri-state area just to kind of get our bearings, so
Mhm.
to speak. We're 1 year coming up on like 1 year old. The first issue winter will be the first 2024 issue. And it's easiest to start something when you start with people that and who are around you. So even though there's people that I don't maybe know personally, I've seen them through networking groups or whatnot. And I'm like, oh, I'd love to have a feature on that person because they seem like they're, a go-getter or active or whatnot. So, but I've interviewed somebody from Canada, like I'm not limiting myself, but especially when you have digital issues, that's something that really does help you sort of spread things out because you're not limited to where you're shipping things or whatnot, and people can see it instantly. But really focusing on the tri-state area for the time being, and then we'll see what
The
the future
goal, that's
holds.
the next goal.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. I love that. So, my next question for you is photography education plays a vital role in the journey from hobbyist to professional. Can you share your resources, workshops, or online courses that would be helpful to others to how they can get started with even working with you?
So right now I'm developing that, and my site, doreenphotography.com, where you can actually sign up to get information about it. I'm going to be focusing my education really on that very individualized one-on-one experience. And that is going to be me actually assessing where you're at. I want it to be, I want it to be close enough for me to be able to actually arrange shoots. So having practice shoots, whether it's models, whether it's families, being able to connect you with people in the wedding industry and different things like that. I have a very large, Facebook network of people who do all sorts of different kind of work. But the emphasis for me is that this is a mentor type program. This isn't you signing up and I shove a bunch of like pre-recorded classes in front of your face. It really is like I want to see what I can learn, and I want to have somebody teach me individually. Included in that also too is going to be the editing portion of it. It's not just shooting, it's that full package, and
That's
being
huge.
a Photoshop person. So it's going to be Lightroom, it's going to be Photoshop, it's going to be some graphics, it's going to be, um, quality prints or preparing things for print. Um, so there's a lot to it. It's not just the shooting end. It's really the stuff that happens after the shoot too is a big part of it. So a person who's doing this one-on-one mentorship with me is going to come out of it knowing how to not just crop and adjust and shadows and all that kind of stuff, but I want them to be able to maybe they want to do like say sports photographies and they want it to look like a Nike poster. Well, how do you add those graphics? If that's something that somebody wants to learn, I can teach them that.
That's amazing. And this isn't even just for someone who's starting off. I feel like this could even be for someone who's been doing photography for a couple of years now who wants to expand. Cause like you just said, sports photography, that's like another realm of photography. Just because you're doing events or you're doing, headshots, but sports, totally different. You have to learn different, the shutter speed, the light,
Absolutely.
all the other things that come with it. So you don't just work with just people who are just getting started. You essentially can work with any level of photographer, correct?
Absolutely, especially someone who's looking to get into, something very specific that may require just beyond your typical editing. And that really, for my photography, that's really set myself apart with the young athletes and dancers and some of the graphics that I put in there. So I can teach them some of those tools, teach those as well.
I love that. I love that. And you sent me over a sheet with some questions, and I have a question on here that I love that I want to ask you. And I feel like it kind of goes with everything as well. What techniques or principles from your photography education do you find most applicable to your current roles in magazine publishing and other endeavors?
Okay. So that's, this is where we really get into the technical end of things, because a lot of times if you're shooting and you're not learning about raw files or file formats, that's a big, big deal when it comes to publishing. I've had photographers send me stuff and it's not big enough to actually put in print. So learning your file formats is really important. Also just how to prepare something for print is a big deal. A lot of people who do layout in magazines, they are doing their own cropping, but they're not actually cropping the picture. They're putting it into frames for how it fits on a page. So don't feel like you have to do that. And also too, like, don't be afraid to take some critique. And I actually want to really mention this as somebody who's spent her entire life in the arts. This is a biggie for me. Everybody needs to be critiqued. Mm-hmm. Everybody. And if you can't take critique, you're going to have problems, right? You're not going to grow. I have a regular critiquer for my layout, and that is my 22-year-old child who has his BFA in graphic design. So, as much as I'm creating stuff on the page, I have somebody, who like picks my stuff apart fairly regularly. So really just being open to critique is probably the biggest advantage you can give yourself in terms of growing and progressing and learning.
Absolutely. That goes for every and any business as well, because I feel like if you're trying to grow anything, I don't know, whether you're doing social media, you're a makeup artist, you're a dancer, you're whatever it is that you're doing, you need that critique. And it's like you said, you're going to grow, you're going to get better. You just have to be able to take it. If you can't take that criticism, then you're going to have like you said, a tough time. Yeah. A tough time in business. But
absolutely.
With that being said, I would love to have you back again for a second episode after the new year, after we see some of the things that you're going to do, which if you can just give everybody a little, just tell everybody what you have coming for 2024.
Absolutely. As I had mentioned before, I'm always looking for ideas or contributors. One thing I did is I made a contributor book. It's like a free little magazine insert that you can see online. It explains the difference between being a contributor and being a feature, which a lot of people get confused on. And if you want to be a contributor because you want to show off your expertise in your area, it actually has a whole bunch of different ideas on that. All of these things can be linked at gritandgoals.work, which is our website. And then if you're interested in my photography education, doreenphotography.com is my photography site. And I'm excited because I'm not planning on having a huge amount of students. I'm looking for those people who are really serious about getting that individualized one-on-one experience with an experienced mentor. And so it's very exciting. And we're starting to actually get some traction with the magazine in terms of we were on News 12 a couple weeks ago.
That's amazing.
And, so things are starting to move along. So I'm excited to bring along as many motivated businesswomen that want to be involved.
Absolutely. And actually real quick, you were a sponsor at our committee event last year, the holiday event. And that is when you had your launch of the magazine, correct?
Yep.
Just when you were out there in the networking in the field and you were part of the event, meeting people, what is one or two things, what's some feedback that you would give someone when it comes to
oh yeah, okay. So that night made quite an impression on me because it was it was definitely the first networking event where I had actually put the magazine out there. And it's always interesting how people react to you when you're creating media. And you probably see this too, like people wanting to be on your podcast and wanting to be part of your networking and different things that you're putting out there. It was interesting to observe, and I had Taylor with me that night. She's one of the photographers that's involved in the magazine. Yeah. And we just thought it was amazing. It was almost like watching human behavior when people approach you differently because you have a piece of media. And I had never been to a networking event where I could see, I'm usually pretty aware, like situationally aware, of what's going on around me. And I try to be. So like to actually see people who are making a beeline for you, and as a photographer going to networking events, I didn't experience that. So that was definitely made an interesting impression. And I will tell you that there were some people who made a really great impression that night, introducing themselves and whatnot. And there was one or two that are like, hey, I want a full page. Wait, how about hello? My name is
the human interaction. Yeah, like that interaction, your connection, make the genuine connection first before being like, I want this. Right. How can you help me? It's like, how can we help each other?
Yeah, exactly. And it's always, any piece of media, even the biggest ones, there's just a person back there. Like start with hello. Always approach people just from that, like you said, that human interaction. So that night definitely made an impact, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next G&O that I can get out to for sure.
Absolutely. Well, we're having another holiday one, but we'll talk about that after the episode. So where can everybody find you? I know you mentioned your website, but social media, where can everybody find you, connect with you, work with you, all the great things?
Absolutely. On Instagram, the magazine is Grit and Goals. And me personally is my name, Doreen.Laskowitz is on Instagram. I know that's a mouthful, but usually if you go through the magazine's Instagram, it's me. It's me and like my intern and whatnot. So that's fine too. So love to connect. And we're on Facebook, same thing, Doreen Photography on Facebook, and Grit and Goals on Facebook as well.
Amazing. And I'll link all of that in the show notes as well. And Doreen, again, thank you so much for taking time today to do this. And I can't wait to have you on again after the New Year's. And I can't wait to hear about all the fun things that you have planned. So
I'm excited to share.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this insightful conversation with Doreen as much as I did. Her expertise and passion for photography education have truly been inspiring. If you want to learn more from Doreen or connect with her, be sure to check out the show notes where we provided the links to her website and social media channels. And as always, if you had found value in this episode, please consider leaving a review or sharing it with others who might find benefit from it. Until next time, keep capturing those remarkable moments, and remember, your photography journey is just getting started. Thanks for tuning in.